Yates to, so in case you guys have more questions about them, thought it would be better to talk about at the top. Initially, I know a lot of discussion around Kirby Yates. So he actually has already seen another physician, completed an MRI, and is most likely headed towards a procedure on his elbow with UCL involvement and flexor pronator as well. In addition to that, Robbie Ray, have new information for you. He slipped and fell while carrying his child down the stairs and bruised his elbow. And because of that, we will be very cautious and then make sure that he is ready to go as soon as possible. Very hopeful that it's just missing one start. He'll be throwing a bullpen here in a couple of days. We'll have another update for you then. And then George Springer has been dealing with some mild, what we thought was very mild in nature, tightness around the oblique. Because of some inflammation, we got an MRI. It did reveal a grade 2 sprain to the oblique. However, his symptoms and all of his baseball movements and patterns are incredibly encouraging. We're extremely optimistic about his strength, about his range of motion, especially his rotational movement, that he could be playing baseball very soon. But because of the MRI, we'll be careful not to overtreat the MRI, but because of the MRI, you won't see him playing for the next few days. And we'll have an update on George in 4 or 5 days. So with that, I'm sure you have some questions.
Yeah, we'll open up the questions and go ahead and raise your hands through the participants window or the reactions tab. And we'll start here with Scott.
Hey, Ross, thanks for the time.
Hey,
Just on Kirby Yates, is that TJ? I mean, that was UCL involvement.
Yeah, I think the most likely headed towards that. Again, it's so fresh. It's most likely going to be a Tommy John revision, and but still very fresh with the information. But that would be the most likely outcome.
Is he going for another opinion, or what's the process now?
It doesn't sound like he will be. He's already received a second opinion.
Okay, and then just on Ray, I mean, you said likely missing one start. Is that one regular season start, or are you still holding out hope he's ready for next weekend?
Yes and yes. So, sorry, no, not one regular season start, one spring training start.
Okay.
So he's ready for the opening series. But we'll see after the next bullpen. That will be the big test.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure.
Go ahead, Shai.
Hey, Ross, just with Kirby, just to follow up, was there some damage that he was trying to pitch through this year, or was this a fresh injury that occurred after, I guess, during his last outing or just before that?
No, I think, it's hard to say for sure. We dealt with the same doctor in the intake process, and he's seeing that doctor now. So our take is that he was healthy. He had no pain, no symptoms whatsoever. It would be better to have a medical expert say chronic versus acute or acute on chronic. But this, part of it was someone that was coming off of a procedure, and we knew it was very high risk with potential of high reward. Feel very good about Kirby Yates in this environment, and just part of it didn't work out for the Blue Jays this year. Sure.
And two other guys who wanted to check on, what's the latest with Thomas Hatch and Nate Pearson, and are there sort of plans in place for them beyond diagnosis?
Yeah, very encouraged. Both are recovering exceptionally well. Both are exceptionally strong. We need to, have all hands on deck as we're thinking about avoiding this moving forward with Nate Pearson specifically, as it's happened a couple of times. So thinking about everything that we can do from a sports science and performance standpoint, kinetically, anything that we can possibly learn to prevent it moving forward. But he's already throwing again. He feels very good. He's in a very good place mentally and physically. with Thomas Hatch, really encouraged as well as we've gathered more opinions and more information that the initial diagnosis is accurate, and he is not going to be missing significant time
So
as long as he progresses and doesn't have a setback.
so the initial diagnosis we got was that just inflammation. Do we know what caused that inflammation? Was there some sort of strain there, or I mean, specifically, where would that have been?
I mean, really, it was just in the elbow region where he just felt some tightness and discomfort, and so we're optimistic that's all it was, and without UCL involvement, and really encouraged by the diagnosis and prognosis.
All right, thanks, Ross.
All right, Shaq.
Go to Ben.
Hey, Ross. On George Springer, and maybe you covered this, but there was a lot of information there.
Yeah.
So are you expecting him to be ready for opening day?
Yeah, we'll see. I think more information in 4 or 5 days. It really encouraged by his ability to play baseball. And just 2 days ago, with nothing new happening. So it was more just the fact that it was continuing the tightness, that we wanted to get an MRI. The MRI revealed an injury that he's able to play baseball with. He is extremely motivated and driven to be ready for opening day. I would imagine that it would have to be us taking that completely out of his hands in order for him not to be playing on opening day. So we'll stay open-minded to it and reassess it as we continue to get closer. But as I said, and can't reiterate it enough, that our inability to recreate that pain, or for him to feel significant loss of strength or range of motion, is extremely encouraging.
So it's almost like his physical symptoms don't line up with what you might expect from a grade 2 strain.
Yeah, I mean, it's always the case that you want all of the information, not just the diagnostic, or not just the physical exam, not just looking at an MRI, but using all of the information to make those decisions.
And is that the same as the abdominal strain that sidelined him for maybe a game a couple of weeks ago? Is that connected?
Yes, we feel that is certainly related.
Cool. Thank you.
Go ahead, Caitlin.
Hi, Ross. I just want to make sure I completely understand. So Kirby Yates is out for the year.
Most likely, if he does have that procedure, which I think is most likely the case, then he would miss the year.
Okay. And so as a result of that, are you as a team looking to acquire another reliever, or do you guys feel comfortable with the depth that you have in your bullpen to make up for his loss?
Well, I would say, I would start it by saying that we are exceptionally confident in our depth in that area. But at the same time, you can never have enough. And we're always thinking about how we can add where it makes us better, not just to raise the floor, but potentially even raising the ceiling. So feel so good about so many stories that we've had in camp beyond the names that will be considered for pitching in the 9th inning. And I know Charlie commented on that yesterday, but stories that we've had from Timmy Meza thus far, Travis Bergen's return, the fastball tick up, how well Francisco Liriano has pitched. Anthony Castro has been performing exceptionally well. Obviously, the names that have already been talked about a lot that we've been relying on in years past, and guys that have had incredible track records. But we're gonna, we have worked hard to build up our depth in that area and feel very good about the foundation, but need to factor this in and consider if we need to be more aggressive as it relates to acquisitions before the trade deadline. And we've been working on that, and we'll revisit that in a more assertive way.
Okay, I'll follow back later for another question.
Sure.
Go ahead, Rob.
Hey, Ross. You've been around baseball for a long time, obviously, and injuries happen in the sport. But have you ever seen a rash of injuries like this in such a short period of time? And what's the reaction around the facility today? How are people handling all this?
Well, I mean, I think it's really that we're talking about 3 key players and on one day, but it is not, that may be somewhat uncommon that in one day we're talking about 3 key players having setbacks. But I think on the whole, this is a pretty standard spring training as it relates to health, what we project to have as an opening day roster, or at least an early season roster, we feel very good about. And it's not just that 26 man, but the 40 man. And around the clubhouse, very, very positive. It's the same feeling as it was 3 days ago. Obviously there's a lot of people that, are thinking about Kirby Yates today and thinking about how big that is for him in his career. But other than that, as we focus on the team and the environment's exceptionally positive.
Given on the pitching side, given the injuries that have happened, how important is it then to have these guys had the experience last year and prove themselves at the major league level?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just the guys that were here or Toronto Blue Jays, but the additions that were made as well. Really, really excited about Phelps and how he's looked in spring training, how he feels, his subjective comments. So we knew it was going to be important to have depth in that area.
Thanks, Ross.
All right, Rob.
Go ahead, Ben.
Hey, Ross, just a little clarity on Nate. You said he's throwing. Is that bullpens? Is that actively pitching? Can you give us a greater sense of what kind of throwing Nate is doing?
Yeah, he will be. I don't remember exactly when he will be throwing a bullpen, but quickly, within days.
That's great news. Okay. And then with George and kind of his urgency and what was pretty much just reading the tea leaves here from him and his body language, like he wanted to get back on the field so soon. Are you trying to calm him down to keep him away from playing time and that sense of urgency for him to get back on the field now?
I think that's always the case with about every player. There are very few that we're not having to be the ones that are, managing that in a, more conservative way. But he is obviously extremely motivated, extremely tough individual, extremely competitive individual. So as I said from the start, if he's not there on opening day, it will be because we don't think it's the best thing for him.
Thanks, Ross.
Back to Caitlin.
I wanted to ask, so losing Yates and then, Robbie Ray being sort of hopeful but questionable for that opening series, is it making you rethink how you were going to build your pitching staff for that opening series and then like for the first stretch of 16 games?
Not really. I really think it's more about what happens over the next 8 days. I believe that we have to continue to play baseball and see how our starters get built up and then consider what our options are. So, having to factor in, George Springer, right now we're just planning on him being on our 26 man roster. Now, if that changed, then we would probably be thinking about it in a somewhat different way.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Sure.
Go ahead, Steve.
Hi, Ross. Considering the amount of optimism and excitement and enthusiasm about this ball club heading into spring training, and just to follow up on what Rob was asking a few minutes ago, are you not feeling in any way snake bit, like why us at this point? Your big signing, you don't know what his status is per se. The big pitcher you added to the bullpen, he's out for the year. Like, is there any snake bit in all of this?
No, not so ever. That's not how I feel. Feel that it's just a part of it. And as I said, I think it may be a bit atypical that on one day I'm starting off an interaction with each of you talking about 3 individuals that were a key part of the plan. But when you step back from it and think about where we are as we prepare for the season, we maintain that optimism and excitement.
Thank you.
All right, Steve.
Go ahead, Laura.
Hey Ross, thanks for this. Just kind of picking up on what Caitlin was just asking you about in terms of your roster construction. You've spoken a lot about the pitching depth that you have, but do injuries and things like that coming up at the end of camp sort of make you rethink how you're going to construct that roster? And at what point do you sort of feel that you need to make a decision on these guys who are maybes?
So to the first part on roster construction, no, again, like it's about a 40-man, it's about having pitching options. And so we don't need to be rethinking how the roster will be constructed. If we had several more injuries or if starters weren't being built up or if performance happens, then we can adjust. But again, we feel very good about the starting point and knew that, not everyone was going to be 100% healthy when you bring 75 players into a building. And to the second question about the maybes, are you referring to who's going to be filling out spot 23, 4, and 5?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's kind of built into my first answer, but I think it probably, obviously, the Kirby Yates injury will create an opportunity for another individual, at least one more individual in the short term. So really excited about the options that we have to be pitching in the 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th inning, and excited about Charlie and Pete's ability to maximize those guys and put them in great positions, and having options we knew would be very important. And that was a part of the Kirby Yates acquisition, is to make sure that we were building up depth in every way possible, free agency, trade, and via the system.
Right. And just in general, whether or not Springer's available for opening day, how do you feel about your outfield depth, and who has sort of stuck out to you so far in camp?
Yeah, it's so interesting. I think we were all, the storyline early on was, where is the playing time for guys? And, that, again, we feel very good about outfield depth, and really encouraged by Josh Palacios and his play. Jonathan Davis from a year and a half ago has just been on such an incredible trend, and is, in our opinion, one of the better defenders in the game. Having Randall Grichuk's versatility to play exceptionally well across all three, certainly exceptionally well in right field, and an average defender, if not better, in center, is an incredible starting point. And Teo and Lourdes, obviously, we're in a great starting spot from an outfield depth standpoint. But again, like we're hoping that George Springer will be in that first series, if not on opening day, in addition to the names that I just mentioned.
Thanks, Ross.
Sure.
Back to Shai.
Russ, with the guys you have on minor league contracts who have outs, I believe Thursday, have you already given them some clarity? And if not, how do you approach the coming days with them to ensure that you maintain them as part of your depth?
Yeah, we haven't given anybody anything concrete. It's been more just talking to them about where things stand and how we're thinking about it, and then letting them know that we'll give them clarity when we need to make that decision, and not because really we need more information. Is we just want to make sure we have all of the information to make something final. So if something else could change, but based on how things have transpired, it's not as much about competition at this point as it is about guys, what position they're in to start the season. Okay.
And I mean, you've touched on this a little bit, but I'm just wondering, specifically in losing Yates as a one inning guy, like, do you want somebody who has sort of that profile where he can fit in 7, 6, 7 to replace it, or do you look to maybe protect yourself with another longer arm just because there's some uncertainty with Robbie Ray and things of that nature right now?
So in thinking, you're talking about in replacing just Yates specifically?
Like, would you try to find a pitcher to replicate that one inning role, or would you maybe be more inclined to look at a long reliever or somebody who gives you a different skill set?
It's just about how we can get better. So internally, we feel good about the ability to replace, whether it's in the 7th, 8th, or 9th inning, someone that can do what Kirby Yates is capable of doing. We feel like we have those skill sets, but how the rest of the roster builds out as it relates to pitching specifically will depend upon the continued progress of our starters, how effective they are, and as you guys know, across the industry, it's not just about the 12 or 13 or potentially 14 pitchers that you have on your 26-man roster. It's about who's prepared at the alt sites and then at some point in AAA to help as well. So I really excited about the open-mindedness and the approach that Charlie and Pete, and most importantly, our pitchers have about being in positions to get outs at any time. Hearing Jordan Romano talk about that is special. He is obviously driven to win and driven from with a team first mindset that's very fulfilling or motivating. So,
All right, thank you.
Go ahead, Mike.
Hi, Ross. I was going to ask you this actually, notwithstanding your injury news today. How much is, not just for you guys, but the whole industry, has spring training kind of been a bit of a hold your breath exercise, because you're asking guys now to go back and prepare for 162, and your club, you've played 62 games since October of 2019, and now you've got to go back to kind of the norm.
So is your question, are we holding our breath in spring training?
Yeah, in a lot of ways, just you wondering how guys are going to react, because you have to build them up for an entire season as opposed to knowing you're just going for that 60-game sprint.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of the reason for the information today is, Robbie Ray's in a great spot. He came into camp in incredible shape, and he slipped and fell on the stairs. And it just so happens that it happens on, around the same time that, we're talking about Kirby Yates as well. So we knew with Kirby Yates going into this that it was a, high risk, high reward play, and that's part of it. George Springer came into camp in incredible shape and still is, and just has what we hope will be just a very minor setback in his play. But to the broader point on how this year will go, we need to be thinking about information in a proactive way, and not having Robbie Ray just go out and pitch today, or not just having George Springer, he says he feels fine, and we can't recreate the strength, so let's just have him play through this, because we are dealing with a different set of information. So we need to be much more proactive than we'll always be that way and use the body of work to make decisions. But we do need to be cognizant that we're dealing with a slightly different or modified body of work given what happened last year.
And a quick follow up on that. How much a guy like Tanner Rourke, you kind of know he's an innings eater. You couldn't really eat innings last year. How much more value do guys like that have this year, because you've got to have your normal rotation and your normal schedule?
Yeah, I think over the course of all baseball seasons, having guys that have the ability to get right-handed and left-handed hitters out over the course of 5 to 7 innings is one of the hardest things to acquire. And there's going to be tough days for certain pitchers, but the guys who can post and can get out there on a regular basis has always been exceptionally valuable and will continue to be. All right, Mike, good to see you.
Go ahead, Ben.
Hey, Ross, as you guys were doing your prep on Springer, did that come up ever? Was there any sort of history of oblique stuff?
No, he's never had oblique involvement, which is also really encouraging.
Nice. And I trust that Robbie Ray's kid is okay?
Yes,
okay. Good to hear.
Absolutely. I think that was, just part of the injury was making sure that was the priority.
Right.
So bracing for that.
Nice. Thank you.
Go ahead, Greg.
Hey, Ross. When you look at this roster as a whole, how do you feel about the 2021 edition of your team compared to how you felt in late March in previous years? As we look ahead to the season.
Yeah, great. Very You're talking about relative just in general, not just.
Just in general terms, yeah. For
Yeah, great. I mean, this has been, one step in the process that as we've continued to think about how we can have a sustainable winning team here that this country and city will be very proud of. We knew we had to be patient. We knew we had to, provide from within, scout, sign, develop talent from within that we could then complement in free agency and via trade. And this is one step towards that vision. Will never be done. It is never a finished product, and there's opportunities to make this team better. But feel like we've taken a very positive step in the process to bringing championships back to Canada.
What do you think the team's capable of?
Being exceptionally competitive and a team that no one else wants to play. So it is a exciting group to be around. Again, just they're uplifting one another. They are thinking about winning, thinking about one another, and it's exciting to be around.
Thanks.
All right, Greg.
Go ahead, Ben.
Hey, Ross, last year, Joe Panik added a lot of intangibles when you added him to the roster and was relied upon as kind of a veteran voice and a steady presence in the lineup or at the plate. How do you weigh deciding Joe Panik makes an opening day roster and provides those exact same things versus some of the greater versatility that you might be able to use from another player?
So how do we weigh his experiences versus versatility?
What you can get from Joe Panik right now making the opening day roster versus some of the other options, like if you carry Jonathan Davis, a Breivik, Valera factors into the conversation, just other players.
Yeah, I mean, with every decision as we think about complementing, the 26-man, 40-man roster, there's two things. It's one, how do we win every day, and what's the best complementary skill set to how Charlie will use that position player roster as it relates to Joe Panik and the names that you mentioned, what the playing time looks like, and then secondarily, depth. So thinking about how we can protect ourselves in the event of injury. So, and experience is a part of that. I know that wasn't a part of your question, but we have to factor that in as well. So experience on both sides. So lack thereof could be a part of the equation, and the need for regular playing time.
And then, sorry if you've already addressed this in a wide audience like this. Trent Thornton threw the other day, through all of his pitches, he seemed to glow about his outing. What did you guys see from him, and are you surprised where he's at this point in spring training?
No, man, he's, obviously what he did 2 years ago, in the AL East is exceptionally important to where he is today. And I'm not surprised at all, given on his ability to have a complete arsenal that he can throw over the plate on a regular basis, recover well. So it looks like he's back to the Trent Thornton that we saw before, and very pleased by that. So we'll see what role or what shape that could take based on the next week and what our alternatives are. But he is certainly a very good option for us to be in our major league bullpen. And if not, we'll consider what other strategies we could take with him.
Thanks, Ross.
All right, Ben.
We'll take our last two here. Go ahead, Mike.
Hey Ross, I was going to ask the Thornton question too that Ben did, so I guess I'll take another tack. You said has a chance to be part of the major league bullpen, so should we take from that he just won't have the opportunity to be stretched out enough over the course of the next week and a half?
Well, that's what I was referring to. So right now, if he made the team, it would be as a reliever. But if he doesn't, then we'll consider what another strategy could be.
But you still see him
as a starting option. Yes.
Okay, thanks.
And go ahead, Shy.
Hey Ross, just when did Robbie Ray slip? When did he have that fall?
I don't remember. It was a couple of days ago.
Okay.
So Wasn't yesterday. It must have been a couple of days ago.
Presumably at his rental home.
At his
or-
home, yes, where he was renting here.
Okay. Do you have any further clarity on what the plan might be for Vancouver if they can't play at home?
We do, and I'm not sure, Shai, I can follow up with you offline. I'm not sure if MLB has worked out the final details of that. Just want to make sure that all the stakeholders are aware, but we do have clarity. I can follow up with you offline.
Okay, appreciate that. And then one last
Sure.
question. Before, when you were talking about the trade possibilities, and I'm just wondering, are there some conversations specific to relievers that you might have had in the off season that you feel could have some potential for you at some point during the season, should you want to go down that road again?
Yeah, and it's not specific to just relievers. So again, we feel good about our relief depth and feel good about the options that we have there, especially even at the back of the back of the pen as well. So yes, we'll revisit those and think about them as things sit today.
All right, appreciate it.
All right, Shai.
All right. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Ross.